Good morning. For anybody just joining us, if you'd like to chat your name and where you're from in the chat, that would be great. We'll give it just another couple moments. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. We've got another couple minutes, I think, of people joining us. So it would be great if you would like to let your colleagues know where you're joining us from this morning. So if you'd like to just type your name and your job title, if you'd like, and which college or wherever else you are from into the chat, that would be great. I see we've got Brett joining us from City College of San Francisco, Gabriella from Glendale. So let everybody else know where you're from. That would be great. Okay, so good morning, everyone. This is the session using a career curriculum to onboard students to guided pathways. A little bit about myself. When I carried out this research, I had previously been the K-14 technical assistance provider for regional career pathways for the South Central Coast Regional Consortium. And I did that, held that position for 5 years. Prior to that, I was working at Moore Park College in Ventura County for 8 years, overseeing their high school articulation. And then obviously when I was working as the TAP, I was helping 8 colleges in my region with dual enrollment, high school articulation, building career pathways generally between the high schools and the colleges. And one of the things that I really firmly believed in, as my background is in career counseling, was that I would be helping to get a career curriculum into the high schools across our region for dual enrollment or high school articulation credit in 9th grade. And so that curriculum was what many of you may know as career choices or career choices and changes, also known as Get Focused, Stay Focused. Nowadays, I am actually working as the executive director of the Get Focused, Stay Focused nonprofit. But what I'm sharing with you today is some research that I carried out in between being a TAP and being the nonprofit director, where my region basically hired me as a researcher to develop a toolkit on how to help students transition better between high school and college. And so what I'm sharing with you today is some of the findings from that research and some models and suggestions for moving forward. And at the end of today's session, I'll also be sharing with you a link for the toolkit. So it's a free resource available to any of you to share with your K-12 or college partners, depending on whether you are K-12 or college, to talk about how can we move forward with this process of helping students have some career curriculum in high school that helps them move more smoothly into guided pathways. And so before we get started on the methodology, etc., I would like to actually ask you if you in the chat could type in one word that you feel describes your high school student transition into your community college. What would you say is the experience of your high school students entering your community college? So I'm seeing choppy, unsure, confusion, confused, resigned, misinformed. Okay, I'm seeing one happy one that says optimistic. Okay, so I think the majority of us feel that our students are not necessarily having a smooth transition, and that we might be doing a better job with actually helping them into their guided pathway areas and their meta majors or their career areas of interest. And thank you, Brett. I do think that the students are excited about coming to college, but I do think that, you know, from most of our experiences, it's a struggle for them when they actually try to do that transition. So the research that I did to develop the toolkit was that I was working with the 8 colleges in my region, as I mentioned, the South Central Coast Regional Consortium. And I was interviewing a mixture of people at the community colleges, maybe people that were more likely to be connected with services or directly connected with working with their K-12 partners, but also with the guided pathways teams, because I had a sneaking suspicion that they had been doing a lot of work on guided pathways without necessarily bringing in their K-12 partners. And so I wanted to get a little bit of input and perspective from them as well. Additionally, I researched best practices across not just California from the early implementing guided pathways colleges, but also across the whole of the country, because we have many states that are kind of further ahead with guided pathways than California. And I was interested in seeing what some of their best practices were. So I was actually using a total of 23 source documents of research about how can we help students transition more successfully. And so this is a little kind of a graphic, which is unfortunately a kind of the sad story of what happens to a lot of our students when they're transitioning in to our community colleges from K-12. And as you can see, this is fairly problematic. We have few students entering the college knowing what they want to study or why. We have many critical supports that are missing. We've got over half of our students that apply to the community colleges in California never actually start. We have 2/3 of students guessing their majors. And unfortunately, it's our lower SES first gen and underrepresented students that are melting in higher numbers. And we use the phrase summer melt to describe the students who enroll, who apply to the community colleges, but who never actually show up in classes. And so we have this very kind of confusing beginning for many students. And I think that some of the later data that you can see up towards the top of this diagram, 1/3 of students drop after their first semester, is indicative of the fact that students don't really know what it is they're doing at the college. They don't have their why. And so I think we have a very obvious opportunity to build a bridge that's a lot structurally more sound into our community colleges. So here's another infographic that kind of explains what an optimal transition would look like for students coming into the community colleges, with the majority of students transitioning successfully. And as you can see, there are some elements that are highlighted here that we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the presentation. And so you'll see in school, we're really wanting more students to have ongoing career exploration, and then to be embedding the information about our college meta majors and also labor market information. We'd like undecided seniors to be taking a career and exploration class. We would like summer onboarding support provided from both the high school and the counselors. We would like summer bridge opportunities for students. We would like orientations to look different. And so we're going to be talking about all of these different ideas in a little bit more depth as we go through this presentation. And so when I did this research, the colleges were almost completing their meta majors. And so they were doing the work on clarifying the path, which probably many of you are familiar with, where 2-year programs of study were being developed for each program at the college. So the next pillar is enter the path. And this is really where we are still at. I think things kind of came to a somewhat of a grinding halt because of COVID. And so I think colleges are still trying to figure out the end of the path, even while they're moving forward to the stay on the path. But really the question that comes out of this part of the transition is, how can we connect better with our K-12 partners? Because we do not currently have a seamless system. And so here's some data that I shared with my region when I did my presentation of the toolkit. And when I was talking about this statistic that over half of the students who apply to community colleges never start, it's actually 56% in California. You can see what that means in actual numbers for the 8 colleges in my region. We were losing nearly 130,000 students who were applying to the colleges and never showing up. And so this number is a lot higher than the number of students that we actually lose between starting college and the end of the first semester, or even the end of the first year. But we don't really talk about this. And I'll talk about why that is a little bit later, but nobody is really talking about this summer melt and what can we do to really help these students transition in more effectively. So one of the problems facing us right now is we've done a really good job with sorting out our meta majors or our career clusters or our areas of interest or whatever we're calling these at our colleges. But the problem is that simply having meta majors in place doesn't mean students are going to choose the correct one for them. And effectively, they can still choose between different meta majors just the same way that they would be able to choose different programs of study. Where we've tried to, sorry, it's saying I've just been muted.
You're good, Karen. I'm sorry, I did that accidentally.
Okay, no worries, thank you. So, so students we know have just been kind of randomly choosing majors as they enter our community colleges, and with usually between 70 and 100 majors to choose from, that has been very random. And so the problem is, if we haven't given them time to understand the differences between our different meta majors, then they're still going to be jumping between them because they haven't really spent any time thinking about what career it is that they want to enter and what meta major it is that would make sense for them. So we need to basically improve the understanding among high school students about these meta majors and the programs within them that are offered by the colleges. And we need to also be providing them with information about employment and further education. So we need to be giving them some labor market data also. And as we know from the research, essentially the first time 2/3 of students choose a major, they're guessing. And so we're really oftentimes asking them to choose a major without providing them any guidance and not providing them any time to be thinking about their choice. And so we have a lot of undecided students, and the research shows us that making them just choose a major creates both anxiety and cognitive dissonance for them. We really need to be doing a much better job in giving them help in choosing the appropriate program for them. And as we know, our colleges do not really have the capacity to help all undecided students carry out career exploration and decision making. We have courses that we put our students in, but if you can imagine from the sheer numbers of students that enter our colleges every year, if 2/3 of them really do not have if they're really undecided, we don't have the capacity to be helping that many students. And so we really need to be pushing this career exploration and decision-making process down into the K-12, down into the high schools, because they have more capacity to be able to help the students access these types of information and thinking. So as I mentioned, my career background is in career counselling, and for many years, for a decade, I taught a class, a master's level class in academic and career counselling that dealt with all the different career theories. And so what we know is that career choice is developmental. It doesn't just happen over time. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't just give somebody a career assessment and expect them to look at the results and then say, oh, okay, that means I should do this. Students need time to actually think about these things. And during high school, they're actually doing their identity development. If you remember your Psychology 101 class with Piaget, he was talking about how students need to be figuring out who they are. And what we know from the research from the career theories is that people developing their vocational identity follows them doing their identity development. And so if they come to the community college and they haven't had time to think about who they are and what that means in the world of work for them, they're not going to be able to do it with just one career assessment. We're not going to be able to solve the problem of them choosing the correct meta major in that way. And so what does this look like in reality? Here's a quote from a counselor at Cuesta College who said, pre-nursing is our #1 major. That is not an informed decision. And so this is the kind of the knock-on problem that we see from this in our community colleges. We need to be giving students time to explore career options, salaries, jobs available after they've figured out who they are. And this is clearly a multi-phase process. So I would like you to just take a moment, and in the chat, I would like you to chat your ideas about how can we help undecided students enter the correct path. So I'm seeing one suggestion of having students do internships before they actually get into the college. Having conversations with them and letting them explore their options, that's definitely important. We need to be giving them more time to be doing things like industry tours, more work-based learning activities, help them see what their skills match best. More counseling and career activities to participate in, have them do informational interviews. And one person, Caroline, is saying that they offer different workshops to meet employers so that they get to attend and hear from professionals. Micro internships, mentoring, employer engagement, career counseling, industry partner presentations, having them use Career Coach and Program Mapper, working with EDD to offer real labor market information, having them complete a personal statement on their application that addresses why they're choosing that particular career area. So I love those. Those are some great suggestions. Thank you. And I will again share with you some of the research that came out of this. So in the toolkit, you'll see there are different sections that address this that we're just going to go through now. So one of the things that was pointed out by a counselor at Ventura College was that these kinds of discussions that some of you referenced need to be happening a lot more earlier in the students' lives. And so in middle school, in 6th grade and 7th grade, middle school teachers and counselors need to be talking to students about all the different kinds of career areas that are out there. And then these conversations need to continue at home. So how can we help with this? Imagine if our colleges were the go-to place for local labor market information. And I know that some of you are going to jump up and down and tell me that you're doing that because you use Program Mapper and that you are linking to local labor market information. So this is a great beginning. Not all colleges, however, are using tools such as Program Mapper, but I think it is really critical that on your meta major web pages, you are actually including that labor market information for students by whatever means, so that you can actually share with them what it means if they go into this particular area. However, we have to balance that with the research showing us that many students find information that we provide to them confusing rather than helpful. And so we need to make sure that we're not just giving them information, we need to make sure that we're actually improving their planning behavior. So one of the things we need to think about is making sure that they've understood the information we're sharing with them and that they've actually moved forward in their career decision making. So one of the ways that we can do this is to have students doing career exploration while we're in high school. And as Davis Jenkins and colleagues point out, the opportunity to explore career fields while in high school at no cost to students and their families is invaluable. And so we know that many of our students are reluctant to take a career exploration class in college because of the cost and the time that they involve. And this is another reason why it's really good if we can offer these dual enrollment career classes to students while they're in high school. And then while we're doing that, we can be embedding information about our meta majors. We can have videos, we can have things that people can download with information about different career pathway areas and the kinds of jobs they could go into and the salaries they would earn. One project I was involved in within our region was to work with the counselors working together to develop those kinds of flyers about the different pathways and the different majors that students could go into if they were taking certain dual enrollment CTE classes in the high schools, and what that meant in terms of salaries and jobs that were available. And then we made that available to all of the high school counselors so that they could just print out those handouts and give them to students while they were meeting with them. So there are many different ways of getting this information into the hands of the high school students, but that's where we need to be targeting, not necessarily our college students. We need to be getting this information out to our high school students before they ever set foot on our campuses. And the reason for that is that if they're looking in 9th grade at the career options that are available to them, if they're receiving some kind of career curriculum, such as Get Focused, Stay Focused, when they're in 9th grade, they're really looking at what their dream job would be. But as I mentioned earlier, they're going to change over time their ideas about who they are and what that means in the world of work. And so they are going to need to revisit that career plan, and they're going to need to look at information from the colleges, and they're going to basically need to transition from a dream to a direction to a destination. By the time they're in 11th grade and they're filling out their applications for four-year universities, they need to know what it is they're going to be doing if they're going to go to a four-year university. If they're going to come to the community colleges, they still need to have the opportunity to take a career class, especially if they're undecided, before they move over and join us. What happens if we implement these different types of strategies? So a counselor at Ventura College, when I was doing this research, mentioned that she'd seen a culture change in the last 2 years, with students having had exposure to career exploration in high school. And they were coming into the college knowing what meta major area they wanted to be in. So if we are offering college career exploration classes in high school, many times this is happening in 9th grade. We're launching our students in high school with a career exploration class. But the problem is that we need to have the students revisiting their 9th grade career plans and updating those plans as they go through high school, especially during these times when our returning high school students are struggling to get back on track. They have had a big loss of learning. We're increasingly seeing research about absenteeism, and students need to be able to have hope for the future. They need to be able to revisit their plans for the future. And once they do that, they will be able to develop intrinsic motivation, and they'll be able to get back on track again. And so these are critical times for our high school students to be able to be either doing career exploration and developing a plan or revisiting those plans. One example from one of the colleges in the South Central Coast region, College of the Canyons, was that they were not just offering dual enrollment career exploration classes, they were also offering a student success class at each of their local high schools. And I have seen this model in some places across the state, but not all places across the state. But I think that if we're going to expect our students to be successful in college and be able to build in some information about college, a student success class might be a good place to be adding information about our meta majors and actually having students take that class before they take their career exploration class. Another model at Allen Hancock College was that the high school counselors basically sifted through their students, their seniors in the fall, and they were able to identify which students were planning to go to their local community college. And then they offered the undecided group of students a career planning class during their senior year, which I think is another helpful model. So what happens if we're already offering a lot of dual enrollment or early college credit through high school articulation or concurrent enrollment to our high school students? We have been doing a lot of different things. One of the things that we've been doing is having our students and parents fill out a lot of paperwork each semester or each year. Santa Barbara City College decided on a slightly different model. They created an agreement with their K-12 schools to be able to work with all of the 8th grade students to get them registered with City College. They built the process into their high school orientation and class selection. And then that consent form basically stays on file for the whole of high school. So the students do not have to fill out repeated paperwork, and neither do the parents. And as you can imagine, for those of you that are engaged in dual enrollment or high school articulation, this completely cuts down on a lot of the work that you are doing, which is basically just chasing signatures. So this might be a model that you might want to think about. Another thing that we have struggled with is trying to figure out how can we get the students that are receiving early college credit to really connect with us and feel as though they have that sense of belonging and that they are really college students. And so I'd like you to take a moment again in the chat to just chat your ideas about how we could be doing some of this work to get our students to have more of an idea about the fact that they are college students. You know, often they're taking these classes in high school and they don't necessarily feel as though they are college students if they're just taking a class that their regular high school teacher is teaching. So please take a moment, go ahead in the chat and chat. What kinds of things can you think of or are you doing that are best practices that you could share with us that would be something that you can do to help those high school students feel as if they're college students? So I wasn't able to look at the chat while I was presenting, but I'm seeing some great ideas popping up in the chat from previously about connecting with homeschoolers and homeschooler networks. So now we've got some ideas coming in about students visiting the campus, which is obviously great, getting them in to look at those different career education areas. The students can join our college events, clubs, plays, etc. And I hear about schools offering them things like free tickets to performances or to sports events, sharing their college newspaper, colleges encouraging them to follow social media, having the students do a signing day on campus, presenting to them at the high schools about what it means to be a college student, having assignments that get them to attend some campus activities, having colleges go out to the campuses to have students look at the different majors, connecting with workforce departments, having certificates, hosting enrollment events, spotlighting exceptional high school students, etc. These are, again, awesome ideas. This is why I love the opportunity to use chat in a virtual world. We get all these different ideas that you can all be looking at while we're going through this presentation. So again, the toolkit touches on some different ideas that I'm going to kind of touch on briefly now. So I also want to have you think a little bit about what kind of early college credit are you offering to your high school students? And this can be sometimes somewhat a la carte. We know, those of us engaged in dual enrollment and high school articulation, that traditionally we have usually got started with some willing faculty to go out to the high schools, or some departments that are willing to take on high school adjuncts who meet minimum quals to teach these types of classes. I love that Bakersfield Community College calls this random acts of dual enrollment. And I think that this is something that we need to move beyond, particularly now that we've got guided pathways. We need to be offering our schools a kind of a portfolio of different types of credit offerings. So for example, many of us got started with career technical education or career education classes for credit. However, we can also help our high schools meet their A through G requirements or their high school graduation requirements by offering classes of those in those different areas. We can launch students on their CSU breadth or their IGETC gen ed by offering those kinds of classes in high school. And as I mentioned previously, we can obviously be offering student success and career exploration classes. We can be offering classes for English or math remediation. We can be offering classes for specific populations, such as students with disabilities. Obviously, we can also be offering classes for enrichment. What I'm trying to say here is that we need to have this be made less confusing for our partner high schools, and to be able to have that kind of portfolio that explains those different offerings to the schools so that they can begin to think about what would make sense for them. And again, we need to be embedding information about our meta majors into either the career classes, or I'm beginning to see a model of colleges offering an explorer or introductory course in the high schools where all of the different meta majors are explained, which again, I think is another great model. And so an example of this in the real world is Santa Barbara City College offering an American history class, which meets high school graduation needs, just as an example. So we talked a little bit about campus connection, and some of you mentioned having the students visiting the college campus as often as possible. Here's a model from Allen Hancock College where they actually have different events for students in different grades. And so you can see that they're starting work in elementary school. So they have activities with their local elementary school students, their middle school students, their high school students, all the way through different grades. They're bringing them onto campus. So this isn't just a one-time activity. This is something that they're doing on an ongoing basis. And what we find is exactly what one of the guided pathways faculty from Santa Barbara City College said here, which is the more positive experience they have on the campus. And he was talking about high school students, but obviously elementary, middle, and high school students, the more positive their experience will be as college students. Another model that we're seeing that can help to counteract this transition that doesn't always go so well for high school students into our community colleges is this idea of having hybrid counselors. And so there are a few different models around this. One that I was seeing at a couple of my local colleges was that college counselors or advisors were based at the high school for part of the time in order to help the students with their academic planning. In another state, Indian River State College was also providing a shared advising tool so that the students that were taking dual enrollment or high school articulated classes had a tool that was shared between the counselors at the high school and the counselors at the college that would flag when students were struggling in the class. And it would mean that they would have more wraparound services from the counseling departments. And so if the college advisor didn't have an opportunity to meet with the student, the high school counselor was able to do that, which I think is another interesting model. Another way of doing this was at Antelope Valley College, where they actually hired and trained adjunct counselors, high school counselors, to become college counselors. And so they hired 16 of them in the local high schools. And they said that this was critical to disseminating information to the high schools about college programs and things like matriculation. Why is all of this so important? Well, one of the things that we know is that we are not doing a great job with matriculating students between the high schools and the colleges, and there's a significant equity issue here. The research shows that there were large differences in college knowledge and understanding what it takes to succeed in college among students within schools that were in different academic tracks, and then between schools by socioeconomic status. And the research showed that only 61% of California parents had received any kind of college information from their high schools. So 40% of parents have no idea how to help their students navigate that transition between the high schools and the colleges. They have no information to be able to share with their students to help them with that process. Another piece of research showed that our part-time students, who are primarily our students that are disproportionately underrepresented, are also the ones who are struggling to close that opportunity gap. And it's talking about the fact that if we were focusing on our students of color, we would be able to reduce the opportunity gap much more. They noted that things like academic plans or programs of study are designed for full-time students, and our part-time students are just lost. They don't understand the course sequencing. It doesn't fit in with what they're doing when they're working to try to support their families and support themselves. And so we need to be doing a better job of helping our part-time students to be able to make that transition successfully. Another group of people we need to be working with more are our high school teachers. This was kind of really interesting to me because I know that most of the work that we do usually is to engage with our high school counseling partners. But what the research shows was that after parents, high school teachers are the greatest influence on students as to whether they attend college or not. And so The teachers, however, were reporting that their only source of college information was either from their students who were now in college, student teachers working in their classrooms, what they were reading in the newspaper, harking back to their own college experiences or those of their children. And they weren't getting any information from institutional sources. And so we need to think about networking with our high school teachers, not just with our high school counselors. And parents are also critical. Bringing in families is a part that's missing from many community college students' experience. And so a couple of different strategies and models here. Santa Barbara City College, who have developed a parent resource guide. And at Moore Park College, they were discussing linking with high school PTAs or sending out parent newsletters. And this quote from Alan Hancock is, I think, explaining what we're struggling with here. Parents don't always have college literacy, and many parents expect their students to be working. And so the suggestion from this counselor was that they needed to basically be helping the parents, giving them college knowledge, and working together with the high school counselors to be able to get that message out to the parents. How we work with the students is also important. And the research shows that actually having the students do their college applications together and do their financial aid applications together works really well, especially for students, as it says here, that are indecisive, lack confidence or motivation, were otherwise disadvantaged, or who don't have parents urging them to apply. So maybe they don't have the social capital that they need to be able to transition into the colleges. And so we need to be looking at what are we doing with our recruitment and onboarding process now that we've got guided pathways. We have an opportunity to really simplify this. And why do we need to do this? So I just talked at the beginning about summer melt, but here are some of the statistics and some of the research, again, that underlines why we need to be doing a better job helping our students over the summer after high school. So we're losing 56 of our students between high school and college for every 100 students. We have complete decoupling of K-12 and higher education in terms of accountability. And so the high schools count students as college bound. The colleges don't count the non-matriculated students in their retention statistics. And so nobody is really saying that it's their responsibility to help the students transition. We have a system that does not link up, and our students are falling into the hole in between those two systems. It was also pointed out in the literature that even if students have high grades and they've done really well in high school, they may not be able to negotiate successfully, navigate successfully their financial aid and their college knowledge that allows them to successfully transition. And so they may do really well in high school, and we may think they're going to do fine transitioning, but they don't always, because financial and college literacy has nothing to do with their ability to succeed in classes. And so again, I'd like to take a moment and have you type into the chat some ideas that you have for reducing summer melt, which, as we've pointed out, disproportionately impacts our low socioeconomic students. So there's a couple of questions in the chat while you're typing in your answers that I just wanted to address. I'm not sure what Alan Hancock College do with their 4th and 5th graders, but if you want to reach out, Tom Lamaker is the name of the person in the College and Career Center who can help answer that question, or anybody in their College and Career Center. And I apologize, I do not know the name of the tool at Indian River State College. But I'm sure, again, if you reach out to them, they'd be happy to answer that. So here are some ideas coming in. Have summer events on high school campuses and bring the counselors to the students. Phone the students. Offer summer camps on the college campuses. Have summer academies. Have leadership in training, employment opportunities. Summer enrichment. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of great ideas coming in here. Workshops on each major for students to participate in. So auto, bring in students for 2 days to do minor repair on an engine so that they get an idea of what the career entails. I love that. So that's kind of like work-based learning while at the college. Great, thank you for those answers. Okay, so moving ahead. Nudging is one of the things that has been shown to be a great strategy. So somebody mentioned phone calls. Nudging is basically texting students, and it's a low-cost, scalable strategy. It costs around $7 per student. And the research shows that there's an increase in matriculation, in persistence, a decline in student loan borrowing, and 60% reduction on colleges for their administrative burden by using texting. So I conducted this research before COVID, and at that point, Santa Barbara City had bought a program called Enrollment FRX, which is a kind of constant contact system for enrollment management. It sends automatic messages to the students, runs reports so that we can see when students are falling off track with their onboarding, etc., and then allows reminders to be sent. And I know that many other colleges started adopting these kinds of technological assistance when they were working during COVID times. So I think we're seeing a lot of colleges have gone in that direction. A lot of you talked about summer transition support as well. And this is exactly what the research was promoting. Shared responsibility to ensure full enrollment, and doing that by high schools staying late and colleges starting early. Again, Santa Barbara City was using a lot of live chat with students, but I'm not going to dwell on that because that was pre-COVID. And again, I think a lot of people are using that for many of their student services offices over the last year or two. But this was the thought of a counselor at Ventura College. He basically pointed out that there's a lot of kind of isolated meetings that take place between leadership in the colleges and in K-12, but we need something systematic if we're going to make lasting changes. And so this is why I keep talking about the need for this to be a system. It needs to be something that students can't fall out of. It needs to be something where it's a bridge that is something that is solid, that's not going to have holes in it, where we lose our students that most need our help and support. So orientations is something that we need to be looking at. And one of the deans at Oxnard was saying, we shouldn't just have one orientation on campus. We need to stagger those matriculation steps. Students shouldn't be hearing this information for the first time when they come to the college campus because it's overwhelming to them. We also need to be doing non-cognitive assessments so that we can help our students that are most at risk of dropping out. We need to be looking at factors like their academic engagement, self-efficacy, engagement on campus, educational commitment, resiliency, social comfort, etc. And we need to be meeting the students where they're at, delivering the right amount of services to the right students at the right time. And we can be providing them with crosswalks of resources that help them understand, depending on the scores that they got, which of our student services would make most sense for them to be accessing, rather than overwhelming them oftentimes with information that they don't need. We can also, if we're doing career counseling in the high school and career classes that have our embedded meta majors, do thematic counseling in orientation. And so we can have our faculty and local employers coming to those orientations and talking to students about what it would be like to work in that particular meta major field. I'm already hearing about colleges using that as a particular way of doing their counseling, and it being really successful. Some of you also referenced Summer Bridge, and the literature also notes that major expansion of Summer Bridge would be a really useful systems level change. So a few years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago now, Bakersfield College started doing pilot Summer Bridge, and look at these outcomes that they saw. They saw double or more than double units attempted and passed, transfer and college level English and math attempted and passed. And so they've been scaling the program over the last 7 or 8 years now, so that they can actually help more students by having this Summer Bridge to be more successful in college after they've transitioned to college. We also need to be using those services to students based on their level of need, as we just mentioned, piloting some questions to add to the portal so that we can figure out what the neediest, which are our neediest students that are most in need of success. Because otherwise the risk of guided pathways is that we're spending a lot of our time and resources helping students that don't necessarily need help. We need to be really triaging our students and figuring out who needs most of our support. So what do we know about ongoing support? We know that even though we can put technology in place and put holistic student support in place, the technologies can't do everything that our students need. And so we really need to be providing other support to our students so that we don't see such high levels of failure rates. And so some colleges, for example, Antelope Valley College was thinking about, had added, a second year experience program. Many of our colleges do first year experience. I think it's interesting to hear that colleges are now considering second year experience to help students stay on the path, looking at that third pillar. And here again is a reminder of the statistics as to why we need to be providing these ongoing student supports, not just to get students into the college, but to help them stay in college and succeed in college. The research shows that our low-income first-gen students are 4 times more likely to drop out after their first year as their peers without either risk factor. So these are the students we need to be focusing on for our second year experience programs. So next steps. I don't want you to just come to this presentation today and think, oh, that was a lovely presentation. That was really interesting. When I developed the toolkit, I actually built in some really kind of concrete next steps that you can be taking with your K-12 and college partners. And so the toolkit includes a readiness self-assessment. And I would love you to, I'm going to share the link with you in just a moment in the chat. I would love you to take the readiness self-assessment and to look at what it is that your college needs to be prioritizing in terms of developing these linkages with your K-12 partners and these supports for your incoming high school freshmen. I would love you to share the toolkit with your partner high schools and districts and have them also complete a readiness self-assessment and decide what their top priorities are. And then to start having some joint action planning meetings. And again, I added an action planning template into the toolkit so that you can really get going with this work. And this isn't just me talking to you about things you could do, but you actually moving forward and doing some of this work. And so here's some feedback from the colleges in the South Central Coast region after they had looked at this toolkit. And these were some of their realizations about things they needed to be doing. The biggest link for guided pathways was not bringing K-12 to the table. They wanted to be sharing the toolkit with their admins and deans. They wanted to have the guided pathways team do the readiness self-assessment. They wanted to look at the campus goals and the strategic plan for outreach and marketing and look at how they would make that more coordinated. They wanted to make sure that early college credit was firmly linked with guided pathways in the minds of the students that were taking those classes. They realized that the services they were offering to K-12 were not centralized and that families and parents were being left out of the equation. Many of them were thinking about this idea of a senior seminar where they would be able to have the students, if they'd taken the Get Focused, Stay Focused class, updating their 10-year plan, but also looking at financial aid, college application essays, and having leadership and work experience opportunities, which goes back to some of you talking about those work-based learning activities as a recommendation that you entered in the chat earlier. Triaging students using non-cognitive assessments is part of what we were talking about, and having the college counselors really embracing the high school students as being their students. The guided pathways technical assistance providers in our region also noted that there were some gaps across our region. They were seeing a lack of summer transition and support and shared responsibilities. They were wanting to make sure that the colleges were getting input, not feedback, from K-12 when they were developing their guided pathways, and also bringing in employers and four-year universities onto those guided pathways teams. They wanted to make sure that they were having conversations with K-12 around the design of the meta majors and looking at things like which math students were taking in high school that would link to their future career options. Looking at career-focused guided pathways to kind of kickstart this process. Really leveraging student voice, asking students what they need and not just designing things for them. Asking them, what do you need from student services? Where do you get your college knowledge? Inviting outreach teams to be part of guided pathways. And if students have career planning classes in high school, making sure that if they were getting that career planning class as freshmen, they don't really need to be doing a lot of work to be updating their career plans when they come into the colleges, if they've been able to revise their career plans over time. So they should be able to go from having a career class as freshmen to updating their plans during high school. And then when they come in and they're doing their student ed plans, it shouldn't take as much work. A lot of the heavy lift is us trying to help students decide what their meta majors or majors should be. And if we've already been able to help them do that in high school, it will take a lot of weight off our shoulders as they enter our community colleges. So I am going to stop share now so that I can drop this link for the toolkit into the chat for you. I would like to open up this time for any questions that you may have, or any comments that you wanted to make to your colleagues about any of these ideas. And while we're wrapping this up, thank you very much for attending this session. I hope you can all see the link now to the toolkit. You can just download it. If on that website, there's a version for K-12 and a version for community colleges. They're actually really similar, but it would give you one to share with your K-12 partners if that would be helpful for you. So thank you, those of you that added in a couple of examples of texting platforms. I appreciate you all sharing your ideas with each other. You had some really great ideas, and hopefully everybody's going to go away with at least one idea. But please do download and read the toolkit, because there are a ton more ideas in the toolkit that I haven't had a chance to touch on in today's presentation. So it's a free resource. Please do make the most of it. If you would like to find out more about our Get Focused, Stay Focused career curriculum, Sandy just added the website into the chat. We're having a free virtual conference coming up on November the 4th and 5th If you register for the conference, but you don't have time to attend the session that you like, you'll still be able to access the recording of that session afterwards. So thank you so much again for your time today. Great ideas from everybody, and let's try to build these bridges for students. I think we've got a lot of work still to do, but I don't think that this is impossible. So any ideas that you can take forward, please do. And thank you all for sharing. Have a great rest of your conference. And I'm doing another couple of sessions this week and next week. So if you found this was helpful, please feel free to come to one of those other sessions. Thank you so much, everyone.